Hi, and welcome to this new webinar. My name is Pepijn Schoenmaker. In this webinar, I'm going to introduce the model which is often called or referred to as the SERVQUAL model or the GAP model. In any case, I'm going to explain how to use this model in practice. Now, what I use as a reference is this great book. And the book is written by Zeithalm, Bittner, Gremler and Wilson. And in this book, if you want to know anything about services marketing or about this SERVQUAL or GAP model, I really recommend this book. Now you find this model in the internal analysis, or in my 6-step plan. I refer to another video which you find in the link here. It's step 3. In the internal analysis, you want to find out how the company actually performs on service. Now make no mistake, it's not that if your company has a product that they deliver, that they don't deliver any service. That's a misunderstanding. Every company has a service or service organization. Actually, there are certain scientists who really made clear that actually every company is a service company and the product is just a part of the company and it's just a vehicle to deliver the service. So every company has service. So, is this a SERVQUAL model or a GAP model? The model that you see here in the picture refers to the GAP model actually. But SERVQUAL is short for service quality. And this model measures the service quality. So this GAP model tries to find gaps in the service that any company can give. Now there is a lot of theoretical background behind all these different gaps. I'm not going to go too much into detail of those. I'm going to try to explain what's the reasoning and the thoughts behind it. Now, you already see that the top of this model has the word customer and the bottom has the company. Now, the whole model is based on the thought that customers perceive certain service or accept certain service. And between those, there is probably a gap or not. We call that the zone of tolerance because customers can accept something and when they are there they perceive it and they say, okay, I thought it was like this, I thought of a 7 but I received an 8, which is great. Or I expected a 7 but it was a 6 or a 6.5. So that zone of tolerance is really important and you can, as a company, kind of play with that zone of tolerance. Let me dive into it. You have the possibility of 5 different gaps. So there are 5 different gaps that we can find. First of all, the first gap. Now the gap 1 is between that line of what the company thinks that the customers want and the customers think that the company will deliver. That's the first gap. So that's a real gap between company, basically the only gap between company and customer. This gap exists because the company never does any research on what the customers really want. So that's basically a lack of marketing research or market orientation. They don't do any research, they only are busy with their own company and they have no clue what the customers actually want. Or it could be that the company doesn't think that customer relationship is really important. So they don't really focus on the customers and what they want. So you can find a gap there. So the second gap. You find this gap in the bottom and the gap is between the company's perception of the customer's expectations. So the company I think my customers want this and this and this. So they have a feeling. And the customer-driven service design and standards. Now, you have to see this, the service design is everything in the company that makes it possible to deliver that service. I always like to explain this with a restaurant. If you enter a restaurant and you have to wait in line because the restaurant is really popular, what does the company do to make this a little bit more comfortable? So maybe there is a really nice hostess who explains like, okay, so we have a table for you ready in half an hour. You can sit at the bar and have some drinks there. My colleague will help you with your drinks. So you can sit there and wait a little bit, and you have the ambiance and you have the sound. Or even in for instance, amusement parks where you have waiting lines, that you have some entertainment to make the waiting more easy. So if the company really knows that customers don't like to wait, they could make the service design like that so that the waiting line is less horrible to stand in and a little bit more relaxing. So there's a gap there. Okay, so the service design. The third gap is between that service design and the delivery of the service. And the delivery of the service is typical a human aspect. So if I stay in the example of the waiting line and the nice hostess who explains you can sit there and you can wait, etc., etc. If she doesn't know, if she hasn't been told that she has to be really polite and friendly with a lovely smile, and that you have these service designs which you can use, then there is a really big gap. Another example is if you have, for instance, a service desk where people expect to be helped, but the employee behind the service desk can't help you because a lack of knowledge or he or she hasn't been trained, then there is a really big gap. So if the service employee doesn't know how to use all the elements that they have or all the possibilities, then you have a huge gap there. And that's gap 3. Now, gap 4 is between the service delivery and the communication. And the communication is typical an external factor. So you promise all these kind of things to your customers. If you come to our service desk, you will be helped immediately. We will solve your problems instantly. Or if you come to our restaurant, we are all very polite. We explain at your table what your food is about, etc., etc. But you don't deliver this service, then there is a really big gap. You probably know the phrase overpromise, underdeliver. This is typical your gap 4. Underpromise, overdeliver. That's even better. So you better take it easy with your promises in your communication of how the service will be, because then your zone of tolerance will be narrower. Now, the last gap is pure between the customers. So the customers, they have a certain expectation due to all the communication and maybe what they heard before from other people, or the stories go around this company, and then they step into your company and they get their service. So then there is a perceived service. So the difference between the expected service and the perceived service makes gap 5. So to sum up, 5 gaps. Gap 1, customers don't know what they want. Gap 2, you don't translate the right service design. Gap 3, what you are delivering is not up to par. Gap 4, what you promise, you don't deliver it. And gap 5, the gap between perception and expected service. So the service quality is being measured with certain dimensions. What's pretty easy to use are the rater dimensions. The rater dimensions are about reliability, assurance, tangibles, empathy, and responsiveness. And you find these dimensions basically in a scale, and the scale has 22 items over these 5 dimensions. And you find them in the book, which I really recommend. You find the dimensions here. So don't ask me where is the scale. Try to find the scale and buy this book. I have to be honest, there are some, if you look into them, there are some small mistakes in there, but you will find them immediately. But in this book you find the 22 dimensions, and this is how you measure it. Now I expect you, maybe some of you want to try this model without the questionnaire, without the scale. Of course, this is possible as well. With your observations, with talking to customers, talking to the personnel and the company, you really can use this model as well in a different way. But if you really want to measure it, use the 22 scale with the radar dimensions. So the pros of this model is it's pretty easy to set up. It's really intuitive. If I talk you through it, you feel that it's intuitive. It's standardized, which is really nice, so you can use it for this company and that company. It's being used a lot in the service environments or in the B2B area. And if you want, you can kind of give it twists that it fits to your goals. I hope you found this webinar interesting and helpful to set up a more thorough internal analysis. I thank you all for watching. If you have any comments or if it helped you, please leave it in the comment section below, and I see you in the next one. Bye.